Enjoy with your headphones for a better listening experience.
Please watch till the end of the video to have the most scariest part of the story.
Thieves of Reddit, why do you steal? Serious.
I haven't stolen anything of worth in years, but during my high school career I stole what I figure to be around $4,000 worth of alcohol. I had two friends that worked at our local grocery store. For whatever reason, they didn't inventory alcohol immediately upon delivery. Whenever the beer shipments would show up, my friends would gunk a few 30 racks, put them in garbage bags, and set them next to the dumpsters whenever they had to take the garbage out. I'd pull up behind the store in my Jeep, throw them in the back, and leave. Nobody ever got caught, and we got plastered for free every weekend. I was popular in school if only because I had parties constantly, with free drugs and alcohol. It was a compulsion. Still is. I had a friend who stole crap all the time, and he brought me along with him a few times before I was hooked and stealing stuff left and right. It eventually got to the point that every time I went to the store, I felt that I had to steal something. Lighters, chapstick, trading cards, small toys, flash drives, whatever. I would try and stop. I would go 2, maybe 3 weeks, before I would succumb and take something again, then it was a few more weeks of stealing stuff. I got more and more daring, and went from just hiding stuff in my pocket/waistband to literally walking out of the store with stuff under my arm. I got arrested for shoplifting on May 3, 2013. I tried to leave a Shopko with some stuff in my pocket and a box under my arm. I almost got to my car, when a guy ran up behind me and told me to stop walking. I was held in a small detention room until the police arrived, at which point I was escorted to a state detention center. My parents paid my bail and took me home. I went to court 2 weeks later, and was required to take an 8-week-long, responsible living class, at $25 a week. If I had missed more than 2 weeks, I would have been facing 6 months jail time. I wish I could get in touch with the guy that stopped me in the Shopko parking lot, so I could thank him. It was a wake-up call. He forced me to realize I wasn't an invincible teenager. I was an adult, and I had to face the consequences of my actions. It's a bit long, and I'm sorry about that, but it's the whole story. I don't condone it, I don't want to justify my actions, and I just wanted to share. I stole from my job for 2 years. I embezzled somewhere between 12-20K, possibly more. Most of it was out of spite for the owner of the company I worked at. I ran the eBay department for a company. I got my training working for one of his competitors but switched jobs because it was closer to where I lived. The job originally paid hourly plus commission. My first month there I sold more than anyone who had ever worked for them. My first month commission check was awesome, something like 2.5K, however the owner flipped out when he saw the payroll, saying someone in my position should never make that much, and forced the GM to make me agree to a new commission payout, averaged between $800-$1,200/month. I should have taken that as a sign and just walked out. I was told over and over by management that if I kept doing awesome the owner would take care of me, but that wasn't the case, and after the 3rd time I was denied a pay raise I left the company and moved to a different state. A year and a half later I moved back to that state and met up with the warehouse manager. We played softball together. He convinced me to come back to them. I stupidly agreed and then found out the real kicker: they stopped paying commission on the job. They hired me back at $1 more than I was making when I left. I really needed the job and decided I'd just make my own commission. I would sell stuff on my own eBay account and ship directly from the warehouse. I would steal computers basically in parts and then reassemble them and sell on Craigslist. Almost every day I walked out of there I had something in my pockets/jackets. The warehouse manager would give me awesome deals on cases because he was trying to keep me there, so I'd just load them up and take them out. Nobody else knew what the stuff in them was worth. I would sell a computer to my friends, and when they showed up and paid, I'd help them load up 3 to 4 computers or servers. My biggest money maker was a guy who bought old processors for gold recovery. Our disassemble line would pile those up so quickly in a week. I'd spend 15 minutes sorting them out and ship him a bag and he'd PayPal me $400 to $800. It was a small company and all the other employees liked me except the owner. The warehouse manager definitely had my back. I think he knew I was taking stuff, just not on the scale that he knew of. I left the company before I ever got caught and left on good terms. I never for 1 second regretted any of the money I took, but if put in the same situation now I would probably not do it for fear of that on my record at my current age. When I lived in the Bay Area, I got kind of desensitized to homelessness even though I've always been somewhat poor and marginal most of my life. I was in San Francisco one time and a beggar who at least claimed he was homeless more or less mugged me. He asked me for change and being not especially in great shape financially myself at the time I said, sorry no, but he kept pestering me and got increasingly aggressive, like walking with me with his head in my face, him a male about 6 feet 170 inches pounds and about 30 years old and me a female about 5 feet 4 inches 150 pounds and 35 years old. I really felt he intimidated me into giving him the cash contents of my wallet. It was hard not to feel bitter after that. Also there are just so many homeless there and they are all very aggressive at panhandling. I'm not unsympathetic but it felt like survival mode to me to try to tune it out. Well, once I was at an airport and saw a guy had a games case, I think that is what it is called, so I said, hey, that thing is pretty cool, he said thanks and kept on playing his game. Well, I knew my plane was about to start boarding and he had another hour or so. He said, hey, I'm going to run to the bathroom, can you watch my stuff? I said yes, and as soon as he walked away, my gate is called. I was so tempted to grab the case and just walk onto the plane with it, so I did. I was walking to the ticket counter, the lady scans my ticket, and before I walk away, I say, here, this belongs to the man sitting over there. Can you give it to him when he comes back? She says yes and I walked onto the plane. I don't know why I almost stole it, I guess it was because it was cool, and I didn't have one. But I am glad I didn't. First job I stole from was at a grocery store, working behind the customer service desk. This was a huge grocery store that had electronics departments, and homewares, etc. People would for example buy let's say a TV, and then decide they didn't want it. Well, they didn't return it to electronics, they returned it at customer service, and it was my job to take all of the returned items back to their rightful departments. This was done mixed in with groceries that people don't want and leave at the registers. Normally, we would sort the cart, and walk the stuff back to each department. When stuff like Game Boys or games were returned, we would take the item, put it in the pocket of our apron, go on break and put it in our bag. Security always checked our bags, but didn't go further than glancing at it while we unzipped it. Later we learned that we could game the system a bit. We'd have friends buy a few large items, PS2s and Dreamcasts when they came out, TVs, etc. And immediately return them to customer service. Then they'd buy like $20 worth of groceries and pretend that they need to use the restroom, ask at customer service if they could leave the cart behind the counter while they did so. I would of course say yes, then I would put the items onto their cart. No one at customer service would say anything because it would look like I'm just sorting the cart to take items back to their respective departments. A few minutes later, friend returns, I give him the cart and he walks out the door. Another one of those jobs was doing the customer service for 2 grocery store credit card campaigns. I would answer emails, sort hard mail, send out gift cards, etc. I had access to every credit card account, was able to activate credit cards, create gift cards of any amount, etc. I would say I probably committed around $100K worth of credit card fraud, and it was honestly too easy. Often the way the card would attract customers is by having attractive girls standing around in the grocery store and getting guys to sign up. They usually didn't even know what they were signing up for until they received the card in the mail. Sometimes they would get angry and just RTS all of what they received from us with a letter requesting to cancel. If myself or one of the other people on my department who was doing the same thing as me got the card and info, which often included a PIN, we'd set it aside, call up using the customer's info that we took off the system and activate the card, then we'd have traveler friends visiting go into a store and buy laptops, cameras, lenses, bulk high-end CF cards, anything we knew that could easily be resold on eBay. We'd only do it every other month so that it wasn't too obvious or easy to trace. In between we'd create gift cards, and intercept RTS gift cards that got sent back to us due to people moving or just not being around to collect it from the post office. We'd get thousands of dollars of gift cards a day. The gift cards didn't just work at the grocery store but also at their partner electronics store and their partner general goods store, think Walmart. So we could use them to buy iPods, consoles, laptops, cameras, etc. iPods and Android tablets were the norm as they could easily be resold. Eventually they started to wise up to the gift cards, when some idiots started taking ones that hadn't been sent out yet from the out tray, like 100 envelopes would go missing over the night shift, so they started locking down hard mail, which made doing anything with credit cards or the gift cards very difficult and risky. So I left the company, as other than that it was a pretty shit job. At my next job had a psycho boss who seemed like a repressed homo, but would act out in extreme homophobic ways, while constantly singing songs about myself and another employee doing gay acts together. It was really weird. I was technically a freelancer for him, but he was sham contracting, and even though he was making a fortune, he was the stingiest person I've ever met. He would come into work flashing his new Rolex and then would argue with us over a few $100s because we had to work 16 hours to get a project done because he didn't allow enough time for it. After a while of that shit happening constantly, I started using the company PayPal to pay myself everything that he argued against, reimbursing myself for purchases that I had to make for the company that he would drag his feet on, or never pay. Never been caught for anything. I like to think that if I was treated well and was happy at work, I wouldn't do anything like it, but again, I find I do it mostly because I get bored and I see the opportunities there. I can see the cracks in most businesses very quickly. From the age of 15 to 24 I was a full-time thief. I'd started pinching sweets and magazines from shops because I was skin and I wanted them, selfish little prick that I was. It escalated to tapes, CD and computer games. By the time I was 17 I was on to cars. Sometimes it was for a buyer, revenge cases or the scrappy who wanted old bangers. Never steal a car if you don't have the buyer first. Never steal a car ever. At 19 I did my first house and office break-ins. Petty cash, TVs, never anything from kids. Stealing Christmas or a kid's stuff was a hanging offense. Always from a house that looked insured. Computers were the best and easiest to shift as it was all done as parts and never full units. At 24 my ex gave birth to our daughter and that was my turning point. I went from being a greedy selfish little shit to having something in my life I actually gave a shit about. My last job was the day before my daughter was born. A mate and I broke into a known kitty fiddler's house. My mate had personal reasons, and I stole my last computer and car. It's been 10 years and I haven't stolen anything since. Tormenting doesn't count, right? Tongue sticking out. If I was to try payback everyone I ever stole from I would be able to settle with them financially. The fact I stole things doesn't make me feel bad or regret. What gets me is the invasion of people's privacy, how they must have felt knowing I'd been in their house, touching their things. Not knowing if I was just a thief, pest, and murderer. I can never make it up to people for what I must have put them through. I am deeply sorry. Back in my drug-using days I used to steal drugs/money/whatever from various dealers I knew. I would go to their house, sometimes buy a bag, hang out and when the timing was right I'd take money, drugs, guns. I took a GameCube once. Then I'd either use the money to go do the same at other dealers, or I'd sell the stolen drugs and get money to continue the cycle. Not saying I'm proud of it but this went on for a couple of years. I got caught by one guy. He knew I did it, I knew I did it, but he couldn't prove it so no one in the community looked at me any different. Well in the end I went to jail off and on. Longest single stretch was a year. I got bored with it and gave up that life. I met a girl, had a kid, got married, went to college, now here I am on Reddit hoping to steal some upvotes, tongue sticking out. I stole from major stores i.e. Best Buy, Walmart, and Target. I didn't shoplift directly. I would buy something like an Xbox 360, an external HDD or a PC, then I would remove the guts and return the item to the store. Xbox 360s I would put a ROD's Xbox back in the case and return it. You have to make sure and return the original case as the serial hashtag is on that. One time I got desperate and put a few rock super glued in it. The lady at Shopko didn't even notice. External hard drives I would take them apart and put in a dead drive and then return it. PCs I'd swap parts. Key to this is always pay with cash and don't act nervous when returning the item. I wouldn't do it anymore as most stores require picture ID when returning an item. When I was in high school and for part of college, I'd find myself awake at like 3 a.m. and I'd jump in my car, drive to some random neighborhood, and walk around trying doors until one was open. Then I'd stand in the living room and look at the photos for a few minutes and think about what it must be like for the people who live there. Then I'd take something, usually a photograph, or a piece of mail, or a potted plant, and leave. I never could figure out why I felt so compelled to do it. I've probably only done it maybe 24 times in my life, and eventually I just stopped. I think I just liked the feeling of drinking in what it must be like to be one of these families. The kind of essence of life that just sticks to your skin in those weird hours that aren't morning or night. The kind of deep emotional attitude you don't notice during the bright hours of the day when your head is deep down in the raging torrent of life. It isn't a thrill or a rush or anything, it just makes you feel clean. Like the cleanest you've ever been. Like walking outside on a cold fall morning, maybe you can barely see your breath, but you don't even feel that soap scum on your body. Just completely, head to toe, clean. I'd hang on to whatever I took for a couple days, never looked at it much or anything like that, and then I usually threw it away. I guess I'm sort of a thief. I don't think anybody ever missed what I took, but hey, I did take something. I haven't thought about that shit in ages. It's kind of funny, it seems so strange now to do that. I never thought it was weird or scary nor anything when I was doing it, but I guess I get how people could get the wrong idea if they ever walked in on me standing in their house. When I was in high school and for part of college, I'd find myself awake at like 3 a.m. and I'd jump in my car, drive to some random neighborhood, and walk around trying doors until one was open. Then I'd stand in the living room and look at the photos for a few minutes and think about what it must be like for the people who live there. Then I'd take something, usually a photograph, or a piece of mail, or a potted plant, and leave. I never could figure out why I felt so compelled to do it. I've probably only done it maybe 24 times in my life, and eventually I just stopped. I think I just liked the feeling of drinking in what it must be like to be one of these families. The kind of essence of life that just sticks to your skin in those weird hours that aren't morning or night. The kind of deep emotional attitude you don't notice during the bright hours of the day when your head is deep down in the raging torrent of life. It isn't a thrill or a rush or anything, it just makes you feel clean. Like the cleanest you've ever been. Like walking outside on a cold fall morning, maybe you can barely see your breath, but you don't even feel that soap scum on your body. Just completely, head to toe, clean. I'd hang on to whatever I took for a couple days, never looked at it much or anything like that, and then I usually threw it away. I guess I'm sort of a thief. I don't think anybody ever missed what I took, but hey, I did take something. I haven't thought about that shit in ages. It's kind of funny, it seems so strange now to do that. I never thought it was weird or scary nor anything when I was doing it, but I guess I get how people could get the wrong idea if they ever walked in on me standing in their house. Ex-thief here. I stole because I thought of it as an easy way to save/make money. I stole from cars, houses, and stores. I've tried very many methods of theft. I don't want to say I stole lots, but I definitely stole way more often than the average person. I was always able to justify myself. Oh look, this person has a BMW 750i, he can afford to lose this gaps. Look at this guy, he lives in a 12-bedroom house, surely he can afford another TV. Walmart is a $250 billion company. These $60 USB drives won't even dent them. One day I got arrested while stealing from someone's car. Since I was a minor and it was my first offense, I was able to get the charges dropped by doing community service, writing a letter to the victims, and by writing an essay that had to explain why people do crime. This program was called Extrajudicial Services. While I was working, writing that letter and the essay, I thought a lot about the stuff I've done and about the consequences. I don't mean the consequences to me, but the consequences to the victims. I realized how selfish I was because it didn't matter who I stole from, I was taking away value from the economy. For example, I break a car window and steal a GPS, now the guy is out for a total of $1,000. Sure, he is going to spend it and it's going into the economy, but it's not producing any new product, it's just replacing a product, so it is actually not benefiting the economy. Also, the guy is out $1,000, which sucks, and I only made $200. Sure, I'm stealing from a big company and there is no dent, but if lots of people do it, share prices go down, which is bad for the stock market, which is bad for the economy. I realized that we are all part of a big picture and we should all do our best to help each other succeed, if not that we should at least not be ripping each other off. This is a big post, and I have trouble conveying my thoughts, so I don't know if you guys will understand my thought process. Not a thief, but I have a relevant story. Last week my car got stolen out of my driveway. No idea how they got in, but I did have my spare key in there somewhere. I also had my laptop, 3 North Face jackets, shoes, and a ton of clothes, textbooks, and expensive makeup in it. Very stupid of me, I know. Anyway, the thief took my jackets and laptop, but nothing else. I had a $200 skirt in the Nordstrom's bag with the receipt showing how much it was, and they didn't take that. Got the car and laptop back, thanks to modern technology and the kid's understanding father, but nothing else. However, I feel I got very lucky. The kid was a heroin addict and needed money for drugs, so he only stole a few of the expensive things. Stealing is never right, but this guy could have taken much more and done so much worse, but he didn't, so honestly I feel very sorry for him. He is only a year older than me and went to my rival high school. No, I don't know him. So I feel that he was simply desperate for drugs and did not steal my stuff to be malicious. I only ever steal from big corporations and companies because for some reason when I do, I don't feel guilty because they are a faceless corporation underpaying their employees and people making their product. It is even better when something is overpriced. I will actually think, they are just asking me to steal this, or I will think things like, $40 for this piece of crap. Hate that. Then there is the rush of getting it in your bag without the people you are with know. Because if the person you are having a conversation with face to face doesn't notice, you have a stupid scene of accomplishment and security that you won't get caught. But once you walk out of the doors and are free, you feel like you got away with something great and tricked everyone, stuck it to the man and got something you wanted out of it, for free. I used to steal as a teenager and young adult. I think I did it mostly because I couldn't afford everything I felt was necessary to keep up appearances. I was always really afraid of anybody finding out that I was poor. We lived on a farm, on the edge of civilization, where the towns to the east were upper-class/yuppie and the towns to the west were kind of redneck. I always got along better with the middle-class to wealthy kids, and part of fitting in was having a new American Eagle shirt or the latest trend, or so my dumb teenager brain though. It turned into a habit that was hard to break, because free stuff is addicting. But after getting caught a few times post my 18th birthday, I got scared of it ruining my future career plans and reputation. I also just felt really wrong about it. Now I'm very proud of the things I've purchased with money I've earned. I steal because I'm a teen who wants to fit in, who wants a full stomach when I go to bed. My parents never gave me money for clothes, for food, for anything really. I'm currently stealing $1,000 a week at clothing departments such as Nordstrom, etc. Do I feel proud of myself? No. Do I get that adrenaline rush walking through those security barriers? No. Do I care if I get caught? No, I don't have a penny to my name. As for everyone wondering how people are stealing things so easily, you haven't stole anything until you walk out of the store. Magnets are your best friend. A phone can do you more than call your parents, it's misdirection. Also, picking your nose when you know someone is following you usually makes them walk away. My first job, 15 years ago, was a server at a local family restaurant. It was all fun and games until I graduated high school. I worked there pretty much full-time, all was fine and well. Then, like most jobs, you get fed up with shit that goes on and start to burn out and resent the place. I should also mention around this time they decided to install a POS system. The owners had absolutely no idea how to use a computer, much less the software. I was 18/19, and like most kids that age I knew more about computers than anyone else there, even though it was just honestly very basic computer skills. So they would call me all the time to help them with the computer. I mean calls at 2 a.m. from the drunken owner's daughter needing help closing out that day's sales or submitting shit for payroll. At first I was eager to help them out because I saw it as an opportunity to become some sort of manager, or at the very least get a raise or compensation for going up there at 2 a.m. almost every night and other random times I wasn't scheduled and helped them off the clock. Manager position never came, those automatically went to family members, no matter how inept they were. No compensation ever given for coming on outside of my schedule. The one time I asked for a raise, they told me they couldn't afford it. Later that same day they asked me to come in and close the day out all that next week while they took their bi-monthly vacation to Cozumel. To those who haven't worked at a restaurant, here are 2 things you need to know. 1. The program used typically has seats. Each seat represents a person at your table. This is helpful when you have a group of 4 people coming in for lunch and they all need separate tickets. Now, the second thing you need to know is when the server is your cashier, this means at the end of the day a report prints out. That report totals up all the transactions you've sold that shift, minus the credit card/check payments, and tells you how much cash you pay the restaurant. Whatever is left over is your tips. This report just works off totals, didn't divide anything out other than cash, credit cards, and checks. As long as your cash, credit card receipts and checks added up to what was on the report, you were good. Say a table of 5 comes in for lunch and everyone orders a Coke. You're supposed to assign each seat a drink when you put in their order. What I did was put in 1 Coke and 4 waters. I would print the receipts, reassigning that Coke to each seat. That way the customers got a receipt that had a drink charge, and paid me for that drink. But at the end of the day, when I cashed out, the system only totaled 1 drink for that table, so the other 4 went into my pocket at $1.79 a pop. I would easily make an extra $40 to $50 a shift. I then figured out anything that didn't have to be sent to the kitchen to be made could be a ghost item. It was a Mexican restaurant, so things like guacamole, $3.50 per side, sour cream, 75 cents, cheese dip, $3.50, and even buffets, $6.50 or $8.50 depending on dinner or lunch, were all ghosts. Bottled beer, $2 to $4.50. I could bring home an extra $75 to $125 * working a Friday or Saturday buffet night shift, lots of buffets and bottled beers, on top of my legitimate tips, usually around $60 to $80. I would often sneak some of my extra money onto other servers' tables, help them out a bit too. Never got caught because they were too computer illiterate and because I ran the closing reports. Looking back, it was really passive-aggressive. I should have just stood up for myself instead of being such a pushover, stewing in anger and taking revenge. After I left, another bartender took over the reports and somehow embezzled about $45,000. She did something stupid and deleted sales. They then took a few computer courses and coughed up the money for auditors. I told this story in another thread a while back and a few people said POS systems now require a manager code to reassign drinks from seat to seat, so obviously a lot of people figured this trick out.
Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, share and subscribe. The Internet Surfer on YouTube for more horror and scary stories.